Welcome to Winning Fist Bumps.
Good
I'm
morning.
Brandon Lee, and over there is Daniel Willems, my friend and partner, and sometimes we beat each other up and all that fun stuff.
Seems to be happening a
And
lot recently, but it's all good.
don't tell him our secrets. Oh man, Daniel, how's Friday treating you?
Very good. Good. Just got back from my kid's school. He had a diorama presentation, so that was fun. I mean,
Nice,
I did most of the work, so it was nice to see my work presented to the school.
very cool. At least,
Did you get an A, Daniel?
yeah,
I did.
Okay, good.
Definitely did.
awesome. Well, let's jump in it because we're gonna actually try to not go overtime today. But so anybody listening, hey, love to hear who you are, where you are. Throw it in the comments. We like to bring the comments in and make you part of the show. But for those that are aware or familiar with me and my other show and Tom's other show, um, Tom and I are co-hosts of Social Selling 2.0. We've been doing that for I don't know, almost a year and a half, 2 years now, something like that. And what's kind of a bummer on the other show is we don't talk about ourselves very often. We don't talk about what we do. And Tom has written a really, really awesome book called The Revenue Zone. Am I getting it in there? And it's been very influential in everything that we're doing, but it's also, I've seen it be very influential and valuable to customers. And so we brought Tom on to talk about it. So, Tom, welcome to Winning Fist Bumps.
This seems so weird. I feel like I don't know. It's just weird. I
Well,
like.
it's
I want to
weird.
moderate or something.
Exactly. To say it's weird because
Right.
I'm moderating and
Right.
you're not moderating, and Daniel looks
That's,
kind of like Carson.
I
But
was
not
going to say,
really.
I feel like I have to make some movie references. I'm like the
Yeah.
not as successful third partner in your co-hosting the show. I feel like I'm Carson Jr. today.
Anyway, I'll do my best to be a good guest.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Tom, I want to start with the revenue zone, and I want to jump into it pretty quickly. Can you give like a quick little background on you? And you've got a really fascinating story, I think, on what prompted you to write the book that I'd love for you to share with everybody.
Yeah. So my background is I'm a tech guy by education. So I have a degree in computer science, but I've been involved most of my career in tech companies in the business side of the business. So even though I have a tech background, I pretty quickly migrated into the sales, marketing, operation side of the business, fairly, a few years after I got out of school. And so I've been around sales and marketing my whole career. I had a digital marketing agency, in fact, for a while. Um, Sold a company to Intuit a few years ago where I actually went to Intuit for a period of time and was part of their digital marketing team. And when I left Intuit, I have another company now. It's a CRM company that is. I have a partner, Kevin Brown, who we all know, right? That it's a CRM company, but it's focused on a very vertical market. And we've had the company for about 3 years, I guess now. And we were in a board meeting and an investor meeting, and one of the questions came out of the typical board meeting is, well, how does your pipeline look? How do you feel about your sales pipeline? How do your revenue numbers look? And I've done this for years. I've gone into many different board meetings, very many different sales meetings, and had that question asked. It wasn't like this was a new question. But as I was answering the question, I felt like I had just been punched in the stomach. I felt like I was just basically answering with bullshit. I
Say,
was
did
like,
your own bullshit meter go
yeah,
off?
my own bullshit meter went way off. It's like, I'd never felt this before. I was like, why am I feeling uncomfortable about what it is that I'm answering here? So I got through the presentation and I was like, what happened? And the fact, when I really peeled the onion back, it was, I really didn't, I was BSing, right? I really didn't know what the pipeline was. It was all a
Mhm.
hope and a guess
Yeah.
because I was doing, and I said, well, why is that? I've been doing this for 20 years. Why is this different? And as I started to peel the onion, I realized that, wait a minute, the buyer process has changed radically. And I keep trying to push the buyer journey into my sales journey, which has worked for many years because I was in control of the sales journey. And now I'm not so confident about those buyers being in my sales journey, but I'm sort of hoping that they're in my sales journey versus having real confidence and real fact that they're in my sales journey. And so that kind of led me down a rabbit hole to kind of figure, because I didn't like it. I didn't want to go through that again. It kind of led me down a rabbit hole of, which ultimately led to the book, which ultimately led to the content of the book. So that's the quick background.
Very
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah, can I ask you, because I'm learning from you guys definitely when it comes to, I love having conversations with you about tech because you're knowledgeable there, but you're also so knowledgeable about sales. So I learned so much from both you and Brandon here. But so what's really the difference between a buyer journey and a seller journey? I guess I'm kind of new to that idea.
Yeah. So, look at like if you look at a traditional sales funnel, right? Like, in a tech company nowadays, a traditional sales funnel is, oh, you get a lead, then you want to have a discovery call, and then you want to go to a demo, and then you want to give a proposal, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a seller journey. That is the seller journey, right? That you're going through. Most as buyers, we don't care about the seller journey. We care about our buyer journey. So if I'm interested in software, do I want to go necessarily through the seller process, or do I want to do the research that I want to do to get to the point, or my company needs to do to get to the point to determine whether the software that I'm buying or the product that I'm buying is a good fit and that it's something that I want to do, whether this is in business or in our personal life. That's how we go about our buying process. We don't need to follow a seller journey anymore. We can follow whatever buyer journey we choose because we have every piece of information that we could ever want out there to do our research.
Gotcha. Well, that makes a lot of sense. But I hear you guys talk a lot about a funnel. So people go into a funnel is what I've always heard, and then you come out the other end. So how does that fit into this conversation about being buyer or seller centric?
Yeah. So one of the concepts in the book, I think it's the first part of chapter 3, as I introduce, is the traditional sales funnel. I hate to say it's dead because people are obviously using it, but it's ineffective. So the traditional sales funnel that we have here it just doesn't work, right? Because as buyers, we don't want to be shoved into the funnel. If we feel like we're being shoved or forced into the funnel, what do? We run away and we go find something else. We ghost the salespeople. We don't want to do that. So, so in this new world, right, we have to look at how the buyer progresses through the process. And in the book, I introduce a concept called the revenue zone matrix, but it's basically a matrix. If you were to draw an x-axis and you were to write down on the x-axis, know, like, and trust. Mm-hmm. And then on the y vertical axis, you were to write down awareness, interest, and demand. So now you have this matrix, right? Mm-hmm. And the goal would be to get a buyer, in order for a buyer to be in a place where they're willing to do business with you, they have to have a reasonable level of trust and they have to have a reasonable level of demand for whatever it is that you're selling. So what your job is to not force them through the funnel, but your job is to guide them and influence them to go from the point of where they may just know a little bit about you and have no trust or even no demand for your product or service, to the place where they have trust, or at least a reasonable level of trust and a reasonable level of demand. That's real pipeline, right? Mm-hmm. That's real something that you can forecast against. And that's what that going back to my board meeting, right? They were basically asking for a forecast, and I felt like I was bullshitting my way through the forecast and hoping that the forecast would occur rather than having some real solid foundation for the forecast that I'm doing there.
Yeah. And that, I mean, I get that because we experienced it. I mean, Daniel and I experienced it. Daniel didn't realize we were experiencing it at the time. But, with Yip Yip and even in Funnel Amplified, it was easy. My previous companies that were successful and had my exits, we got databases, we picked up the phone, we started making calls, we sent out direct mail, we sent out email. And it's kind of like I was talking to a founder of a managing partner of a company the other day, and he's been in sales for 26, 27 years. And I said, well, do you still love what you do? And he said, no. I said, well, why not? Like, I wasn't expecting it. He's an owner of a company. He said, I just like the days when I could call 20 people and 10 or so of them would call me back and 5 or so of them would get on a call with me, or like a discovery type thing. And 2 or 3 of them would close deals. And it was fun. I got to talk to people. It's like, now nobody returns my calls. Nobody returns my emails. And that's what we experienced with Yip Yip and Funnel Amplified, is we put all the normal things in place and we're all excited and go, we're going to go do it again. And it was like, what the heck?
Mm.
Yeah.
That sounds like a masochist to me, honestly. Like, who likes to make, not to be rude, but who likes to make phone calls, especially at people you don't know? I don't know. That's, I mean, everyone's a little,
Well,
okay.
I used to. I
again,
loved it. It was a
and
game. It
again,
was fun.
right? It worked. It
Yeah.
worked
Well,
back
that's
in the
probably the reason.
day, right? If you do, it's a numbers game. If you do enough work and you do enough outreach, or you do get inbound, either way, if you get enough people into your funnel, then certain number will come out the other end. That worked back in the day.
Sure. And I gotta think, sorry, I didn't interrupt. I gotta feel it's still somewhat working, like, because it's some sort of automation, because maybe not cold calling so much, but like I get DMs and connection requests in LinkedIn daily, either nothing in it from somebody who's obviously trying to sell dev services to me, or somebody who I don't know sends me a connection request with a message like, you know, we've got great offshore developers. Let us know if you ever need anything. And
Yeah.
I think your matrix, like they're not anywhere in that. They're like in an opposite matrix.
Can I answer that first, Tom?
Sure.
Because I think it was this, like, if I wanted to put a pool in my backyard, I could go dig the pool with a shovel and it would work eventually.
Sure.
Right. But it'd be smarter to go bring in a bobcat or something and knock it out faster. And that's the way I look at cold calling and cold email right now. It's a mindset of do it faster or do more of it. And there's been a lot of tech like, oh, we can do this and do more cold calls for you. And we can do this. And, and even all the like predictive intelligence and things like that. We're just trying to be better at guessing who to bug today. Is that fair?
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's not that I won't say, Daniel, that it does not work. It's very inefficient and it's very ineffective.
Sure.
Right. So you're literally looking for a needle in a haystack. And so that's what is causing a lot of these issues, is that you're looking for a needle in a haystack and not able to really actually, do something that's effective, that actually can build a predictable pipeline at an affordable, reasonable process.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Tom, I'd love for you to talk about, because I think two things I keep thinking about, and I'd love for you to address before we're done. One is we get the question a lot of, oh, that sounds passive. And that's really, really hard for sales leaders and C-suite to feel like their sales process is passive, even if it's more fruitful. It's hard to make that, get comfortable with that. And then the second thing is the anonymous zone. I want you to talk about the anonymous zone, because I think everybody can relate to that, because we all, as buyers, and we all is both, right? We all buy stuff, we all sell stuff. That anonymous zone, I think, is really real, and something that sales leaders don't pause long enough, or C-suite pause long enough to take a look at it.
Yeah.
So I threw two questions
Yeah,
at you.
no,
You want
but
me
they're
to
related,
start
actually.
one at a time?
They're related. So actually, the reason that I wrote the book was for that exact reason, is that this isn't a passive, right? Sales or business is not passive, right? It's not like I'm just going to sit back and hope that somebody sort of swims into my pool, in your example.
Right.
That, yes, buyers are entering the matrix.
Hey, Tom, we can't hear you. You got to, I think, jiggle your.
I heard you, but
There you are. Now you're back.
Okay, sorry.
it's all good.
Buyers enter that matrix that we talked about, whether you know it or not, right? That, just no different than we were talking about earlier, right? Whether it's this show or our show or whatever, people find out about you and they enter into they start to be aware of what you do, and they start to have some, knowledge of who you are, right? And they start doing their research. And if they start to have interest, they'll do more research. Maybe their company will do research, but you don't necessarily know it. They're not telling you. They're not going, Brandon, hey, guess what? I'm doing research. Just to let you know, I'm out looking and researching what you do and researching your company. Mm-hmm. So that's what I call the anonymous zone. But the whole idea is, and a good, what is the statistics now from Gartner and B2B? 75% of companies are doing their research anonymously before they even think about talking to a salesperson, right? And I think that number keeps going up with Chat GPT and AI. You can do even more research without having to talk to you can research your content. I mean, there's just so much you can do without having to deal with a salesperson. And the other Gartner research that I talk about in the book is that especially younger buyers, they would just prefer not to have to deal with a salesperson at all, right? They just want to do it self-serve. Now, I don't think that's the right solution. I think the salesperson has a very valuable role in the process, but it doesn't mean that
It depends on the product and service, right?
yeah. But in B2B and B2B and traditional, I think they do. So the anonymous zone is when your prospects or when your potential customers, better word, are doing their research, they're getting to know you, they're getting to get some interest in what you do. And so then the question is, will you just sit back and let them navigate? That's the passive part. And the answer is no, of course not. But you're not going to force them through that zone, but you can inherently do things that will guide them and potentially influence their track through that zone. And that's a lot of what we talk about in the book. It's not passive at all. We don't want to be passive. We want to be able to be active and helpful and valuable in that anonymous zone rather than just saying, oh, well, we're screwed. They're in the anonymous zone. I guess we have to wait for them to come out the other end. It's like having a dead spot on your cell phone. I'll just wait for it to come back again.
So moving them through that zone, because I guess I've heard from you guys a little bit about this in the past, but like, is there some sort of KPI that says they're now moved to here? Because since you don't really move them there, they're telling you they've moved to a new spot. Is that kind of how you get that feedback to know they've moved?
Well, you're observing, right? So
Gotcha.
And again, I don't necessarily, Daniel, if you're in my matrix, as I talked about, again, I may or may not know that you're there, but I have to assume that you're there. And through even the content, like we're doing here or whatever, I have to do things to then assume that you're consuming the content, but I have to think through what content am I providing that's going to help you continue to move through that process.
Or sending them pieces of the content.
If we know who they
right?
are, right? Absolutely.
Yeah. So if you and this is where the passive, and then I want to summarize something, and then let you two talk about where AI can help companies with this. But yeah, when somebody's in your revenue zone, and there's a lot of ways that like they watched a show, they've commented on your post, or you commented on theirs, and then they commented back, and you're connected. Like there's some assumptions there, but if they're your ideal customer and you're having some sort of conversation or engagement with them, and there's a lot of very active ways we can do that. When one of my favorites is see who's viewed your profile, and then send them a connection request and ask them, hey, you looked at my profile, we're not connected, let's connect. What were you looking for? Like start those conversations, and they may not be ready to buy, but if they're an ideal customer, they're probably looking for a reason. So let's assume they're in the very bottom part of your matrix, and then send them information, not from a salesy, let's get on a call, but hey, here's something that we wrote. Here's an episode of our show. Right. Here's a snippet from our show. And we're influencing their research instead of demanding that let's get on a demo. It's not passive, but it's different.
Yeah, but you can do it at scale, and it allows you to influence people that maybe are not in market right now, right? It's not necessarily people that are looking for your product or service, but they're just interested in your category. They're interested in what you're talking about. You now have a much better way of influencing and bringing more people through that matrix rather than just the small percentage that may be looking to buy right this second. So it's actually much more efficient and a much broader way of moving people into and building pipeline, right? At the end of the day, we still have the same objective, right? It's I think that's Brandon, I know we get this. We still have the exact same objective, is we have to build qualified pipeline. We have to be able to go to our board meetings or our investors or our boss or whatever and provide a forecast that you feel confident about and can back up. That's never going to change, right? That's never going to change in business with AI, without AI, or whatever. So how do we do that efficiently and effectively and predictably? That's all we want to do. And so keep trying to do the same things that we're doing. We're not doing it efficiently. We're not doing it predictably. So we have to do it differently, and we have to do it in a way that aligns to the buyer, not to the seller.
And I do want to say, if they're in the matrix and they don't know they're in the matrix, then really ignorance is bliss, right? No one knew the
Yeah.
movie reference, The Matrix. You guys, I had to pull it
Oh,
apart.
look at
Like,
you.
so the movie
Ignorance
was
is bliss. You
Matrix,
did
and he
good.
said ignorance is bliss. I mean, that's like a double movie reference. But anyway,
You did good.
thank you.
And you didn't give us time to let it absorb
Yeah.
in, you
And it
know.
is a pretty old movie, but
Well, it's classic
yes, it is.
though. And you know, Nor, would you bring up Butch's quote on there, because I want to use this, and thanks for that, Butch. You don't understand why sales teams that aren't meeting quotas believe doing more of what's not working is going to work. And Butch, thanks for that. And we talk about it as like just telling your team to pedal faster, right? They're going against headwinds, and the wind's getting heavier, and you're telling just pedal faster, right? What's going to happen is you wear people out and they quit. And that's what's been happening with a lot of salespeople recently. So, from an AI perspective, from a technology perspective, and yeah, we look at things through the filter of social. What is potential? What's possible with AI to help companies overcome this?
Oh boy, a lot. So
That was my job. Sorry, Brandon. I'm supposed to be
yeah,
the tech AI guy, but you stepped it up.
Well, I was asking it for both
No,
of
for
you because
sure, for sure.
I want you in
We're
on
20
that
minutes
too.
in. I think we should be getting to AI at this point.
yeah. No, I mean, God, I mean, there's so much. So I'll just give a. First of all, one of the things that I talk about in the book is defining for your company what it means to have a prospect in the revenue zone. And that means that you've developed a reasonable level of trust and a reasonable level of demand with that prospect. And they're actually seriously considering doing business with you. Okay. Um, but believe it or not, most people can't answer that question as to what it would mean. And so I go through the book. I say, well, what are the three things of the three things that a prospect needs to believe and the three things a prospect needs to understand to be in that revenue zone? Believe it or not, most companies can't answer that question. Okay. And if you start to answer those questions and then you use AI to work backwards and say, what would be some really good content? What would be some really good information that would take that prospect from not knowing anything about you to the point where they have these three understandings and three beliefs? The AI can really help you architect that road to the revenue zone,
Okay.
right? So it can help you architect it, number one. And then once you know what it is, it can also help you create that content in the most efficient way possible and the best way possible so that you have the right content. I mean, that's right off the bat, two major ways that AIs are going to be able to help, which when I wrote the book, the word AI wasn't even in our vocabulary. And the book's a year and a half old now. So I feel like it's back in the old days.
Okay. So what you're telling me is have AI create your content. Marketing team goes in, creates content with AI, blasts it out to your team, and everyone posts the same thing on social. Is that what you're telling me? Sounds like a plan. I'm just making sure that's the
I
plan we're
love
going
it.
with.
I love it. See what Daniel did right there. He just teed that up perfectly for a
Yeah.
conversation. I love
Yeah.
it.
So no, I think one of the things is we've talked about this. I think AI, one of the big side effects I think of AI is people are going to really understand their business a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to understand what's going to
Well,
be required.
they
They
can.
can.
They can.
Yes, they can. Right. But I do think if you're going to use AI inherently, right, when you start training models and training things, you have to understand a bit more about your business in order to train models and to train things that are going to do it. I have to train it to align with what I'm trying to accomplish. And believe it or not, a lot of businesses don't really know what it means to get a prospect to a place that they're in that revenue zone. And so,
Mhm.
and they don't know what's required to get there. So the AI can help us define that. They can help us define that road, and then they can help us define the bricks or the content along the way to get from here to there,
That makes sense.
which is a lot of what
and
you're doing in Fistbump.
yeah, that's a really different way of thinking for a lot of C-suite and sales leaders. They didn't have to think that way. The first step was do the outbound and get them on a call and do a discovery. And if you're still holding on to those motions, they're not producing the fruit because they're not responding to the cold outreach, and they don't have time for you to do discovery. Like on our other show, Anthony and Arena would talk about, it's like, if you're going in and you're spending time going, okay, well, tell us what your problem is, before you even start, you're thrown out,
Mhm.
because you should know my problem. And that's another area where I think AI, as you were saying, Tom, can really, really help companies.
Mhm. No, I think we have to get to know ourselves a lot better,
Mm-hmm.
right? Either personally or at a company level. And not only just the president or the owner of the company, but the employees of the company have to really start to know the company a lot better. And what I mean by that is, who is my ideal customer profile? What are
Mhm.
the attributes of that customer profile? What does it mean to have them in the revenue zone? What are
Mm-hmm.
the three things that they need to believe? What are the three things they need to understand? What are the things that we need to do to facilitate so that they get to that point? How are we going to do? It's like and maybe this is my tech background coming out, but we have to start engineering this if we're going to be able to effectively use AI. But you know, you hear a lot in the beginning, well, if you can't write a business plan, you shouldn't start a business, right? But a lot of people do start businesses without a business plan
Sure.
because they can't articulate. But if you can't really run a business, if you don't understand, the company doesn't really understand some of the things that we're talking about here, and you're certainly not going to effectively use AI. And we're seeing this in Fist Bump, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're asking people a lot of times to train so that they can use the AI in Fist Bump, and they're like, I don't know who my ideal customer profile is, or
I was,
I don't
I was
even know who I'm trying to sell to.
I was going to say exactly that. So we have that tool, the company AIQ, where you can you add in your files, basically your knowledge base for your company, and we give them 6 files to add. And we've noticed people's eyes glaze over, and it's like ICP, brand. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but
Yeah, your
things
brand,
like
your
this
voice, your style.
that you would think your
Yeah.
company would have all those things put together, and you would just go to a file folder and be like, oh, cool, I'll just upload all 6 of these. Now I have an AI based on my entire knowledge base that I can ask anything. And we've
Yeah.
got people that haven't done anything with it. And it's just like, we might not be doing a good job explaining it, but I think it also speaks to the fact that a lot of people don't have this information. So it's this whole garbage in, garbage out for AI. And that's just what it's going to continue to
Yeah.
be if you don't have
And,
information.
and that's why, I mean, what we're launching in January for everybody is a service that we help you create those 6 key documents. And we didn't plan on it. We didn't think
Right.
about it before, but we're realizing that so many companies don't know that. And if you're going to leverage AI at all,
Mm-hmm.
you said it, Daniel, garbage in, garbage out is more important now than ever. And that's where I think a lot of people have used AI and it didn't work real well, and they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
Sounds a lot like people's response to using LinkedIn.
Yeah, for sure. And I
tried it before.
think you can definitely use AI to feed AI too. So there's plenty of prompts and people out there that are using AI to say, this is what I do, what are my competitors, coming up with all this information in order to give it back to AI once you've looked at it and made sure it speaks to what you want to speak about. But we also have tools like put in your URL for your website. We'll go scrape it for you and then summarize it in AI and then put it into your own knowledge base. I mean, I don't know how much easier to make it than
Yeah,
that. Like put in a URL and hit enter.
but Daniel, here's what's happening, right? If I take a lot of people put their website in, and
Mhm.
then when it comes out the other end, if you summarize the website, or you even say, based upon, have the AI analyze the website and
Mhm.
tell me what business you're in and who your customer is and what you want to communicate to them. And they're going to look at that in horror because the website doesn't align with
Okay.
what they believe is their customer and what they're trying to communicate. I agree completely, though. We are using AI to even help companies or ourselves reverse engineer what we are, right? How do we use AI to help us really understand who we are, who we want to reach, who is our buyer, and how do we best influence and help that buyer and I'm excited about it.
Mhm.
But I think
Mhm.
a lot of companies just blindly live off of their relationships and their charisma and maybe a great product, and they don't really know how they're going to do and build a business at scale. And I just think there's a lot of opportunity as we go forward.
Yeah, I've got a topic for us as we wrap up here in the next 5-ish minutes. How's that? Um, so Daniel kind of, we'll throw a Pirates of the Caribbean reference in here. I think Daniel kind of threw a shot across my bow at a conversation that we're having internally, just for everybody, is, I believe a lot of people, and I think there's room for both, but I think a lot of people want the output of AI, but they don't necessarily want to use AI for the input because it's a totally new way of thinking. Now, I agree with you on the business side. I think absolutely we should be leveraging AI to help us do it better. But I think that's an interesting conversation that we're actually going to have later. But it's one I think that's good for the show because I think it's very relevant, and I don't know if people are thinking about it that way as much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's definitely some fear. I would agree with that 100%.
But I like using AI, even just personally, to ask questions to get to know myself better, right? Mm-hmm. And to get me thinking, and to get me, sometimes if you just say, well, write down what you like. Oh, I like, pizza and golf and whatever, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But it doesn't really cause you to think, is that really what you like? Or, and by kind of taking you through it, it really starts to help you understand what is really going on, kind of the story behind the story, if you will. I do agree it's new, it's foreign, it's weird,
Mm-hmm.
all of those things, but it's also could be really quite powerful and effective at the same time.
For sure. I think it's one of those, it's all moving so quickly that people are learning it quickly. I think some people have a fear, but then they get over it. And then some people are going to need their hand held a little more. I think it is tough to find that balance between what do people want and how do you simplify something. I didn't know we were going to have this conversation on the air right now, but this is cool.
No, I think it's a relevant conversation
sure.
Because if we're having it internally, I think it's something that other people should be talking about.
Agreed.
And I think one of the things, Tom, that you said that I want to push back on, not push back on, but question, is I like using AI to help me know myself better. How many people really set out to know themselves better?
Good question.
Yeah,
right. And I know there's a ton of self-help books out there and all this stuff, and it's a thriving, booming industry. But a lot of times you'll see somebody that's got 20 self-help books on their shelf, and they're still trying to solve the same problem they started with book one, right? It's like, we want this, but we don't want to do the work to get the result. And that's partly my concern with trying to push people too quickly into AI.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that, what you're talking about, Brandon, goes outside of AI, right? It's a mindset. I don't know what the right word is, but you have to have the desire to try and do some things differently and make change, right? And I think there's a lot of power, but if you aren't willing to do that, it doesn't matter if you have AI or anything else, it won't change the situation. But I'll just give you one little example, and I know we have to wrap up. I'm reading a book right now. I highly recommend it if you're a business owner. It's called 10X is Easier Than 2X. And it's basically saying that it's easier to think about 10Xing something in your business or your life than 2Xing. And it talks about philosophical mindset issues related to that. And I look at that, and I've read the book now almost a couple times. And I've been working on having more of the 10X mindset, right? How do I look at things from that 10X mindset versus but I also find myself frequently falling back into bad habits of 2X mindsets. But yet, if I was using AI and I'm building my AI and my AI persona, I would say, make sure that my AI persona always uses 10X mindset, right? And help me to do that too. Help me in my writing, help me in my content, help me in my thing. So it allows me to be a better version of me, right? Because it doesn't go back to bad habits, or it doesn't fall into other things that are there. And I know this is very but that's the kind of opportunity that we have with ourselves or with our business. Take that same analogy to your business now. If you want your business to have a certain culture, if you want your business to operate in a certain way, incorporate that into what you put into your AI for that business, and then make sure that what comes out the other end reflects what it is that you care about in the culture that you're going through. I know it's pretty deep, but it's It's
I think what that illustrates for me is for everybody right now, there's going to be, just like anything else on adoption, early adopters. I think unlike any other time, and I can't remember. I wrote about it, I commented about it, but when everything was moving to the cloud, and I say everything because I tend to be an early adopter. I saw everybody moving to the cloud, but there was a lot of companies that were late, and they put it off, and they were scared and all that. 4 or 5 years later, when they moved to the cloud, it didn't hurt them that bad, right? They may have lost some money, they could have saved more money or something, but it didn't hurt them that bad. I don't think that's the world we live in right now. I
It's a
think
shorter.
people hesitant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that time, that adopter curve is compressed, really.
Because the impact of AI is so much bigger than the impact of the cloud was. I believe that's
No,
it.
I think it'll definitely create a differentiation much faster from the haves and the have-nots, if you want to call it that, by
Yeah.
the speed of which it's adopted.
Yeah. So Daniel, 30 seconds or less summary of what we talked about today. And then Tom, I'll let you have the last word.
Yeah, mind blown with you guys in your sales talk. I've learned a lot about how to present myself. I mean, I'm kind of learning the whole concept of helping people go through that matrix. So I definitely need some more insight from you guys on how to help move people through that, whether it's through follow-up messages and getting to a sale. But yeah, it's really been eye-opening in order to how it's been changing. The world's been changing from this funnel concept to the revenue zone that Tom's been talking about. So I definitely learned a lot today. Thank you guys.
Yeah. Tom, as our guest, which is weird for me to say, you want to, how would you summarize what we talked about today, and then let people know where they can find you, just in case they don't know?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to just summarize. I'm basically rewriting a good chunk of the book, The Revenue Zone, and relaunching it next year to take into account a lot of the things we talked about today with AI. Because the book came out a year ago, May, and it's obsolete in terms of its just what we just talked about, in terms, not in terms of the concepts, but some of the mechanics that I go through in the book just are obsolete. And so I'm rewriting a lot of the mechanics, same concept, same outcome, but using AI. So I think that's the last word, Brandon, is the fact that I'm having to do that a year and a half, and it's kind of radical, major changes to the book, just shows how fast things are changing and how different of a world we're in than just a year and a half ago.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate you coming on, Tom. I know you got to go. For everybody else, hey, look, we have fun doing this. We have a lot of fun doing it, and I'd just be remiss if I didn't say, if this is it's creating curiosity with you, come check out Fist Bump. We have a 2-tier AI platform with our company AIQ, and then a tool where individual users can very easily come in and train their own model about who they are personally, and then we create output that comes from the company and from their personal model in order to create brand copy, but a personalized experience, a personalized output for each person. And where we believe that is really important is because the buyer journey has changed. The customer journey has changed. Customer experience is everything. And everybody on your team should be looking at LinkedIn or other social channels as a valuable communication channel. Screw the word social media. It's a communication channel. And if you and your company are not using the most relevant communication channel in the 21st century, you shouldn't be leading and running 21st century companies. So there's the big push at the end. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate you for coming, and we'll see you next time on Winning Fist Bumps.
See you next week.